Sometimes, destiny doesn't arrive as thunder. It doesn't break through the sky with lightning. Sometimes, destiny falls quiet, like a feather. This is the story of a boy, a feather, and the day his fate changed forever. His name was Daniel. At 17, he felt invisible. Not because no one saw him, but because no one really looked. He lived in a small Midwest town, where football ruled the hallways and confidence was currency. Daniel had neither. He was lanky, shy, always scribbling in notebooks instead of speaking out loud. Words lived in him like trapped birds, fluttering, desperate. But his tongue was a locked cage. Whenever teachers called on him, his throat tightened. Whenever classmates asked him to join, he shook his head. His mother worked late shifts. His father was gone. At night, Daniel sat at his desk, whispering sentences to himself. But his own voice sounded foreign, like a guest that didn't belong. And he began to believe the lie whispered in silence. You have nothing worth saying. One autumn afternoon, Daniel walked home through the park. Leaves tumbled in red and gold. Children played tag. The air smelled like wood smoke. He sat on a bench, opened his notebook and tried to write. But nothing came. His pen hovered. His mind was fog. And then, it happened. A single feather drifted down from the sky. White, light, slow as breath. It landed on the empty page in front of him. Daniel stared. It was so small, so fragile, yet it had chosen him. Not the football star, not the loud kids in the park. Him. For the first time, Daniel felt like the universe had placed something in his hands. He picked it up, held it between his fingers. A thought sparked. What if this feather is a sign? A challenge? A reminder that even fragile things can fall with purpose. That night, he taped the feather above his desk. Every time shame whispered, he looked at it. Every time he felt small, he traced its outline. He made a decision. I will not let my voice stay caged. So he began small. He read one page aloud from his notebook every night. He whispered poems into the dark. He practiced words not for perfection, but for release. The feather watched, silent, steady. 2 months later, Daniel's English teacher announced a poetry reading at school. Every student had to present. The room buzzed with groans and laughter. Daniel's chest tightened. This was his nightmare, words on display, voice exposed. But that night, sitting at his desk, he looked up at the feather. It seemed to whisper, you are light. You can fall into the world too. So Daniel signed up. The night of the reading, the auditorium hummed with chatter. Parents filled rows. Students fidgeted backstage. Daniel's palms sweated. His notebook shook in his hands. When his name was called, he stepped into the light. Every fear screamed, run. But he remembered the feather, how it drifted, not rushed. How it landed, not crashed. So he took a breath. And he read. His voice cracked at first. Words stumbled like newborn steps. But he kept going. Line after line, syllable after syllable. By the final verse, his voice steadied. Not loud, not flawless, but his. And when he closed the notebook, silence filled the room. Then applause. Not polite, genuine. For the first time, Daniel's words had flown free. That night, he went home, looked at the feather, and whispered, you changed everything. He circled one word in his notebook, voice. And maybe tonight you've been holding back too. Maybe you have a notebook of dreams you've never spoken. Maybe your words feel caged. Maybe the world has convinced you that silence is safer than stumbling. But listen, even a feather can change the course of the wind. And even one shaky word can change the course of your life. So let me ask you, if you had to choose one word to set free tonight, just one, what would it be? Share that word quietly in the comments. Daniel didn't become a famous poet overnight, but he kept reading, first in classrooms, then at open mics, then at community centers. The feather stayed above his desk, a reminder of the day everything shifted. Years later, he was invited to speak at a youth conference. He stood backstage, now 25, calm but nervous. In his pocket, tucked safely, was that same feather. When he walked on stage, thousands of young faces looked back. And he said, "I once thought I had no voice, but I was wrong. We all have something worth saying. Sometimes, it just takes a feather to remind you." The crowd rose in applause, and Daniel smiled, knowing the boy who once whispered alone had become a man who gave others permission to speak. So maybe tonight you feel like Daniel once did. Empty page, silent voice, heavy silence. But remember, a single feather can change the wind. A single choice can change your direction. A single word can change your fate. You don't need to roar. You don't need to be flawless. You just need to begin, to open the cage, to let your voice out, even if it trembles. Because one day you'll look back and realize the feather was never small. It was the start of flight. If this story reminded you that your voice matters, hit like, subscribe for daily motivational stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear. A single feather can change a fate.